A Taco Bell employee is in extremely hot water after a customer makes disturbing find on their bank statement, according to police. So let's check this out. By the way, Taco Bell suspect arrested on identity theft or fraud and theft charges. So let's check this out. An Ohio Taco Bell employee was arrested this month after allegedly scamming customers with fraudulent credit card transactions, reports said. My card would never come out of my hand again. You can hand me the machine, alleged victim and Taco Bell customer Crystal Orwig told WTVG Great News. I'll pay for it that way. Yeah, for like me personally, I don't really trust basically anyone in the drive through, right? Because what many people don't know, right? But a lot of criminals, if they're in this whole like wire fraud, credit card fraud, etc. space, they could just get like a really cheap like credit card skimmer. So when one of these employees just swipes your card to like purchase something, either right before that or right after that, they swipe it onto this credit card skimmer, basically stealing all of the information on that credit card, all of your information, where they could just basically duplicate that card and literally make any transactions pretty much that they want. It is like a brain dead, pretty much a monkey missing half their brain could pretty much pull this off, right? Like it's such a scary thing that it is so easy for people to literally skim your credit card, your debit card, etc. That's why like whenever I get like fast food and whatnot, because I don't get any groceries at all, what I do is either I pay for it in cash or I use the kiosk or the tap. Like I never give someone my card. Period. End of story. And to be frank, if you're someone who wants to be a little bit more paranoid and protective over your identity and your like card information, etc., don't ever give someone your card. Yep. Like same thing with like say that you want to go take out like your date to a really nice restaurant. Do it in cash. Like pay for it in cash. Do not let them take your card out of your view doing who knows what with it, right? Like I've never really understood why people are completely okay with having a stranger take their card away from their point of view where you have no clue what they are doing with that card. Like that is a very scary situation because they could skim your card information and then wait maybe a week, maybe a month, maybe months later and then start using it. So you wouldn't even know that it happened to you at that time. So all I suggest is like just be a little bit safer. Be a little bit more paranoid. Like that there's just some like scumbags operating in this world. So yeah. Travell Mosby, an employee at a Taco Bell on Navarre Avenue in Oregon, Ohio, was arrested this month on identity fraud and theft charges after customers said their bank statement showed fraudulent charges sometimes reaching hundreds of dollars and excess charges. Couple Kristen and Crystal Orwig said they recently made a regular stop at the fast food location when they raised their eyebrows at the cashier taking longer than usual to run their card. I hand the kid my card and he swipes it, Kristen Orwig told WTVG. He's in there for a few minutes and kind of looks over at me because we're like, "Where's my card?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm having trouble with your card. I'm going to have to swipe it." The couple said they had just used the card at a different business and knew there could not be an issue. The cashier, suspected to be Mosby, got the card to work, and the couple didn't think much of the matter until they checked their bank account a few days later. They allegedly discovered $700 worth of online credit charges from the location and are currently working to recover the funds. The Oregon Police Department investigated the matter, including allegations from other customers of similar fraudulent charges, and arrested Mosby. Officers told WTVG there isn't much customers can do to prevent such crimes beyond regularly checking their bank accounts and flagging authorities if they spot illegal activity. So if your credit card has been compromised, please file a police report. It can be done in person at the Oregon Police Division, or if you are a resident, an officer can be dispatched to your home. When filing a report, please provide the officer a copy of bank statement indicating the fraudulent charges. Also provide the charge with the date and time of the transaction that you believe is when your card was compromised. The police department posted to his Facebook account last week. Yeah. Yep, there's going to be some comments. But again, like, be very careful as to where you use your cards, right? So there's like a couple of levels of like protection that you could do, right? You could do with cash, right? Which is what I prefer. But the risk of paying with cash, and this is a risk that many people don't even think about, is that you could potentially get counterfeit money back. Because personally, this has happened to me, not in a fast food place, but in a gas station. Now, this was like a very rural gas station. There wasn't really anything around there. But I paid something with like a $20 bill, got like $10 and a few dollars back. Then I went to go use that $10 for something at like a nearby Publix at the time. And then someone, like one of the employees, let me know that's like, hey, like this bill is like not real, right? I'm like, what the hell are you talking about, right? He's like, no, this is not a real bill. It's like, what the hell? So like I asked him if I could keep it so I could show it to like cops and whatnot kind of stuff. He's like, this is just like crazy. But yeah, you gotta be like careful because literally this can happen at any location, anywhere in the world that you could get counterfeit money back, that your card information can be stolen. Now you don't necessarily want to like live in like a constant paranoia, but having just like a level of skepticism is nice, right? So if you're someone that only wants to use a debit card because you're not a credit card person, use a debit card, but only have money in that debit card that you are okay with not needing right away, right? Because even though that you're protected with a debit card, the same way that you're protected with a credit card, the difference, the negative difference, is that with the credit card, technically speaking, you are borrowing money, right? So your money is technically not on the line immediately. So, meaning, let's say that your credit card balance is, well, like your credit card limit, I should say, is like $1,000, right? But you got like skimmed for like $500. Okay, that's a bad thing, but that sucks. But the credit card company will pretty much like, you know, get rid of the charge after a while, right? But you still have access to your funds inside your bank account. If you were to use a debit card, same situation. Well, now you're missing $500 out of potentially $1,000 that you had in your bank account. So that's kind of an issue. Not to mention that you'd probably have to lock up your debit card, meaning that you can't really spend out of that debit card or the checking account easily, right? Not in the form of a card until maybe like a week later. So that's something to think about too. So if you use a debit card, typically only put money in there that you are just spending and you're basically okay with potentially losing. At least not be able to access it for like a few days, maybe a week. If you're a little bit more paranoid, use a credit card with an okay limit, but also has very good fraud services so that if in case something does happen, you're never going to have to pay out of pocket for it, which would be pretty nice. And then on top of that, go down the paying things with cash route. Just understand that you could potentially be getting a counterfeit bill back. And on top of that, if you really wanted to, you could end up getting like a specialized marker that marks bills to make sure that they're legitimate bills. So let's check this out. All my credit cards have the transaction notification limit set to the lowest possible, usually $10. I get an SMS notice within a minute or two of the transaction. All of mine are set for anything over $0, so I get a notification every time. I also use Samsung Pay and haven't had to use my physical cards in 2 years. My card declines the transaction if they're suspicious and then sends you a message a few minutes later. It says if this was you, click OK and go back and do the transaction again. It is embarrassing as your card comes up denied at the check stand and you have to try a different card while everyone's looking at you thinking you are a deadbeat. So this person says, I was in retail for about 40 years. As soon as credit and debit cards started to be taken at grocery and convenience stores, the fraud started. I have lost track of how many cashiers I have had arrested for credit card fraud. The worst part is they are no longer worried about the consequences because they are not harsh. Some police departments did not even take it seriously because no one was physically hurt, it was only money. That and also, like, I believe the maximum for these like frauds are like potentially like a decade in prison or maybe 5 years in prison or something like that. But I guess depending on like the criminal's point of view, they might be thinking, oh, well, I mean, potentially I could be making a few $100,000, maybe even like seven figures by the time I get caught, so maybe it's worth it in their mind. But either way, be careful. Like, just be careful. And also, like, don't go to like shady places to buy stuff at, too. If you use cards at gas stations or outside ATMs, be on the lookout for card skimmers that people place inside the card acceptance slots to steal your card data. I've read that you should check the slot to see if there appears to be any loose fitting parts inside the slot, as it could be a skimmer. In Europe, they always bring you the machine the US is way behind the rest of the road. Yeah, if you go to any store and they straight up take your card away from your view, be very, very wary of that. Like, be like, why the hell did you just do that? Yeah. Always keep receipts twice. We've had people adjust the tip to their liking, taking a $3 tip, changing it to $18, and another we left the tip on the table and they added on an $8 tip themselves. Olive Garden one time, we ordered the soup and salad lunch, me water, and my husband iced tea. We look at the receipt and it shows two iced teas. He changed it, but then I realized it was a faded receipt from months ago. He was now putting the soup and salad orders into the computer, using the old receipt for people, and pocketing the money. Wow. Yeah, pretty crazy. Let's see. To all the confused Canadians, Europeans, Australians, pretty much everywhere else reading this, yes, we still hand our cards to waiters. Yes, they still leave with our cards to swipe them. And yes, we still fill out the slips by hand and sign them. Yeah, like I believe, like for example, I think in Canada, everything is done by like a kiosk, like at the table or something like that. So like if you were to go to a restaurant, it's all literally done by kiosks. Like, oh, this is how much charge, tap, swipe, whatever, fill it out on the kiosk and go on. I think that's kind of like how it's like some restaurants are starting to do it now, where you could like literally just pay at the table, which is a pretty honestly a better way to go about doing it if you're going to use a card in some form. So once upon a time, the kid behind the register in a fast food restaurant was in fact a kid, a high school student. Today, at $20 an hour, ex-cons are more reliable until they're not. Hmm. So this person says this is why you never want to use your debit card when you aren't operating the machine yourself. Whether a debit card or credit card, you can dispute the fraudulent charges and get your money back. But if it's your debit card, the bank will tie up your cash while the recovery is going on, sometimes a couple weeks. Yeah. So that's why I said that's like the one downside in my opinion when it comes to using debit cards, which is why I'm not necessarily against using credit cards. It's just that so many people don't have the ability to use a credit card without potentially doing harm to themselves. But yeah, okay. Feel free to give your thoughts about this. I just thought this was kind of interesting, and that people should be a little bit more careful when they end up, using their cards. And if you are super, super nervous about this whole thing, just pay in cash and not really care too much about it. At least that's what I would do and do. If you want to learn how to get a debt, go to 40 and Bucks. Stay tuned for more financial commentary.